Welcome back everyone, it's Eric from Rare Candy. Here today we are back with another Sword and Shield deck profile. This time it's going to be for the new Lapras VMAX and Frosmoth. Definitely I think one of the more hotly anticipated new pairs of Pokemon that we're getting from Sword and Shield. Definitely seen a lot of talk about this archetype and people wanting to see this. So this is actually the same list as well that was featured in our recent Testing Grounds video. So if you guys do want to see how this deck looks in action, I will have a link down below in the description. And also if you guys are excited about this archetype and want some more Frosmoth content, our Stage 2 patrons and higher over at patreon.com/rarecandytcg actually have access to a brief expansion article detailing some additional text and other ways you can build around this archetype as well. So if you guys want to get some exclusive content and help support this channel in the process, I'll have a link down below in the description for you guys to learn more about that. But with all that talking out the way, let's get into the actual deck profile today and see how this deck is going to look. So up first we have our Frosmoth line. We are playing 3 copies of Snom, but more importantly 3 copies of the new Frosmoth. So Frosmoth, this ability will look very familiar to anyone who's been playing for a while, very similar to the Emboar of the past, the Blastoise of the past. But once during your turn before you attack, you can accelerate, or actually not once during your turn, but as often during your turn as you like, you may attach 1 water energy from hand to one of your benched water Pokemon. So we can, if we have 5 water energies in hand, we can dump them all in play and start doing a lot of damage if we want to. Now, of course, the big downside to this compared to Blastoise of the past is that this has to be water Pokemon, and it has to be a benched water Pokemon, which is the more annoying part. But nevertheless, it's a stage 1 instead of a stage 2, guys. I mean, this thing is going to be a lot easier to get up and running. So that is the whole reason why this card is going to be so good. And luckily, there's a good bit of water Pokemon, including some new ones from Sword and Shield, like the new Lapras, that can really abuse something like this ability. So this is going to be the heart and soul of the deck, guys. So 3/3 line of this, but up next we have Lapras V. Lapras V is going to be a new attacker from the new Sword and Shield set. I think the V and VMAX are both worth pointing out. Both I think are relevant for this discussion. So Lapras V, it's one of these new Pokemon V. It's just a 2-prize Pokemon. No GX attack or anything like that, but you know, it's got a good bit of HP, 210, and just gives up 2 prizes. But it also has a lightning weakness, something to point out going forward. Doesn't look like the water Pokemon are going to be weak to grass as often anymore. And then a 2 retreat cost. And then its first attack for a colorless energy, you attach a water energy from hand to this Pokemon and switch it with one of your bench Pokemon. So this is nice because if you start with this thing, you can get down and attach an extra attachment essentially and get out of harm's way until you're ready to start attacking. We also play Lily's Pokédoll in this deck as well, so you have the option of throwing one of those active and deny your opponent a prize on their next turn potentially as well. So this first attack I think is actually really underrated out of this entire evolution line. And that second attack for 3 water and a colorless is 210, and you return 2 water energy attached to Lapras V back to your hand. So this is okay. You know, we can knock out a lot of the like non-tag team Pokemon GX, like your Heatrans, your Deandres, all that type of stuff. So that's fine. You can even knock out opposing Lapras Vs, and you get the water energies back, which is something I think is important too, because typically you rather be attacking with Lapras VMAX, not Lapras V, just because Lapras V is a little bit more vulnerable. 210 HP is a little bit lower than what it evolves into. So in case you're going to get knocked out on your opponent's next turn, you at least get to keep 2 of those energies and slam them back down with Frosmoth on your next turn. That's going to be Lapras V. And then up from there, we just have 2 copies of Lapras VMAX. So VMAX, this is the new 3-prize mechanic that's coming out in Sword and Shield. It's basically just a Pokemon V that evolves, has a lot of HP. This guy's 320 HP, so Lapras VMAX is such a tank, and then it gives up 3 prizes whenever it is knocked out as well. So Lapras VMAX here has an attack for 3 colorless energies, 90 plus 30 more for every water energy attached to this Pokemon. So this is kind of like the old Blastoise Keldeo EX deck back during the 2012-2013 format, but just updated for today's standards. This has basically the same attack that Keldeo used to. This has basically the same ability Blastoise used to. And that deck saw a lot of play, so I think there is precedent for this archetype kind of being set up for success. But yeah, you have essentially an unlimited damage cap. You can knock out everything in the game, including Pokemon VMAX. This is actually one of the only decks that has this unlimited damage cap to knock out VMAX Pokemon, which a lot of decks really aren't going to have the option of doing. So Lapras VMAX is just a hulking tank of an attacker that, you know, usually once you take a knockout with this, because of how high your HP is, your opponent can't take another knockout, meaning Lapras is normally going to grab you multiple KOs before it goes down, which is really nice. Sometimes you can win a game just from one Lapras knocking out 2 tag teams and calling it a day. So yeah, fantastic new attacker that we're getting from Sword and Shield. So that's kind of the core of the deck, but we do still have some other Pokemon in here. Up next, we have a 1-2 line of Silvally GX. So I think that is going to look really odd because you would think that we would just be playing a 2-2 if that's the case. And the reason we're not is because we're actually playing Ditto in this list, which we'll get to. But Silvally, I actually really liking this deck because this type of deck in particular has historically been very susceptible to hand disruption, like N in the past formats, or in this format we have Reset Stamp and Judge and things like that. Of course, more notably Reset Stamp. But yeah, if they knock out your only attacker with energy and Reset Stamp you, a lot of times you won't have what you need to actually come back and set up a response on your next turn. So Silvally GX is giving us some insurance with this ability, Disc Reload. We draw until we have 5 cards in hand. Now, it does have a couple of attacks, which are worth pointing out, I guess. For its first attack, Brave Buddies, 2 colorless energy, 50 plus 70 more if you play a supporter. And then its GX attack, 2 colorless energy, you knock out your opponent's active if they are an Ultra Beast. So we're not going to use these attacks most of the time, especially since we can't accelerate energy to this, since it's not a water Pokemon. But the ability, like I said, is really going to be the main reason it's going to be in this deck. So I think for a similar reason, you could consider playing OHKO GX. Silvally, I do like. It is a little bit tankier. You can attack with it. It's going to be out of range of being sniped by things like Naganadel GX, Pikarom, etc. So yeah, that's why we're playing this. And as I mentioned from there, we have 1 copy of Ditto Prism Star as well. We'll throw this bad boy under here since most of the time he is going to be our second Silvally GX. So Ditto, of course, is just going to give us the flexibility of evolving into either our Silvally GX or our Frosmoth. I really wanted 4 Snoms in this deck just to guarantee the turn 1 Snom, much like in the past. Blastoise decks will play like a 4-1-3 or like a 4-0-3 line of Blastoise. So I wanted to play something similar to that, but I'm opting for the Ditto instead because it gives us the flexibility of evolving into a Silvally as well. So I think for that reason, you could make an argument to cut a Silvally and just commit to the 1-1 line. But in case we have to discard some of our evolution pieces with a Professor's Research or something, I like having the option for a 2-2. If you get 2 of these in play, your deck is just drawing cards like crazy and really helping you find energy. And another thing to point out about Silvally, one thing it has such good synergy with is the fact that you're always accelerating energy from hand, meaning you're constantly lowering your hand size to allow you to actually play or get good effect off of this ability as well. But anyways, going on to the last Pokemon that we have here, we have 1 copy of Palkia GX, which is a really insanely random card. Palkia GX really hasn't been the best card historically. It has seen some play and expanded in Archeostoise, but I actually do like it here, mainly because we don't have a GX attack. Pokemon V don't have GX attacks, and I actually think Zero Vanish is a really strong GX attack against a number of different things out there. Because for 3 water, 2 colors is 150, and your opponent shuffles all energy attach their Pokemon back into their deck. So if you're playing against the mirror match, and maybe your opponent has a really strong start as an example, and they set up a Lapras VMAX with like 1 billion energy, you can get a hit in on it and shuffle all of that energy back into their deck, giving you a chance to kind of mount a counterattack and swing the game back in your favor. Or think of something like any of the fire decks that play Welder, Reshizard, Mewtwo Mew, etc. This can shuffle all those energies back into their deck, and this attack just gives you such a big tempo swing back in your favor if your opponent doesn't magically have a way to get all of that energy back in play. So Zero Advantage GX actually been a really good GX attack. We've really been liking this. And then from there, we have 1 copy of the Dene GX to round out our Pokemon line. So of course, just for that Dene changeability, a lot of times we are going to need multiple pieces in a turn, especially if we are trying to take like a big 1-hit knockout out of nowhere and we need like 6 or 7 energy. We're going to need some combination of supporters, the Dene, and or Silvally GX to make that happen sometimes. So going on to our supporter cards, we have 4 copies of the new Professor's Research. So discard your hand, draw 7 very familiar looking cards. in this deck. You know, this is like the old Professor Juniper from back in the day. Our Pokemon is like the old Blastoise and Keldeo. So this deck in general is kind of like a blast from the past here. And I'm really excited to have this card for a deck like this because we are digging very aggressively to hit lots of water energy. So discard your hand, draw 7. You know, we can actually get some Pokemon back out the discard pile thanks to some new recovery options in this deck. We also have ways to get energy back as well, so we really don't even mind the discard effect too much in here. And then from there, we have 4 copies of Cynthia as well. So shuffle your hand into your deck, draw 6. We're playing no copies of Lily in here. I think that is a card that a lot of people might kind of look at, but I think Lily actually gets a good bit worse in the new format just because you can't even play a supporter on your first turn. So if you're going first in the matchup and you open Lily, it really is kind of worthless. It's just a draw until you have 6, which isn't that good anymore since the secondary effect of Lily is only good on your first turn going second now effectively. So that's why I'm preferring Cynthia and Magnolia. They're going to be just, I think, a little bit more consistent in their uses. So yeah, Cynthia, just a nice shuffle and draw 6. But we do have a couple of other one-of supporters. The first of which is going to be 1 copy of Misty and Lorelei. So you get to search your deck for 3 water energies, put them into your hand. Obviously solid because a lot of times when we're playing supporters in this deck, it's actually to find water energy. So this is one way we can just guarantee 3 energies and get attacking. And also the secondary effect is relevant in this particular list because we do play Palkia. So here we have, it says if you discard 5 cards from your hand, you can actually reuse one of your water Pokemon's GX attacks in a game. So if we use Zero Vanish and your opponent starts to get some more water energy in play, you can actually have the option to reuse that GX attack if you want to, which is really cool, I think. So yeah, Misty and Lorelei, big fan of this. Most of the time we are just playing it for the first effect, but it is nice at the least to have the option of a Zero Vanish at some point as well. Up next from there, we have 1 copy of Mallow and Lana to round out our supporters. So of course we get to switch our active with one of our bench Pokemon, and if we want, we can discard 2 cards from hand and heal 120. So we are accelerating energy onto bench Pokemon. So if we are, you know, if we have a Lapras VMAX and play with like 4 energy, just as an example, and your opponent promotes something that has a lot more HP, you're going to need a way to get back onto the bench. Mallow and Lana is just another way we can do that. Heal off some damage in the process. Like I kind of mentioned, 1 Lapras VMAX in a lot of games will kind of go the distance and just win the game for you. So this is another way we can potentially heal that 1 Lapras VMAX and just keep tanking hits and blowing through everything in our path. So up next from there, we have 2 copies of Viridian Forest as well. So this is going to be our stadium card of choice. Discard a card from your hand and search your deck for a basic energy. Just another way we can guarantee energy with this deck. And like I said, it's going to be our counter stadium. We need stadiums right now in this format since stadiums are pretty much everywhere right now. So yeah, it just pretty much makes sense in a deck like this. Going on to our items, we have 4 copies of Quick Ball, the savior of the Sword and Shield format. So excited that we have this card. This deck I don't think would be possible without it, but you discard 1 card from your hand, search your deck for a basic Pokemon. So this is going to allow us to get all of our Pokemon into play, but we do have a lot of other searching options as well. The next one up from there is going to be 3 copies of Evolution Incense. This is another new card from Sword and Shield. You just search your deck for an evolution, which is nice because all of our core Pokemon in the deck are evolutions. Lapras VMAX, Frosmoth, even Silvally GX. So this is just going to allow us to more consistently find those stage 1s or pseudo stage 1s in the case of Lapras VMAX. Up next from there, we have 1 copy of Fishing Rod. Again, another new card from Sword and Shield. This is going to allow us to get up to 2 basic energies and up to 2 Pokemon from discard back into our deck. So, of course, we can get energy back when stuff gets knocked out. We can get evolutions back if we have to discard them with Professor Magnolia, whatever it might be. Just a nice little form of recovery that we have here. But we do have some other ways of getting Pokemon, though. We have 2 copies of Pokemon Communication here. Just give us a couple more outs defining what we need. So, of course, we put a Pokemon from hand back into our deck and get another Pokemon. So, playing this in kind of lower counts just because Quick Ball and Evolution Incense do kind of the bulk of the work. And we don't play an insanely high amount of Pokemon. We play, I think, like 17 or 18 off the top of my head. I think it is in this deck. So Pokemon Communication, it's not a card you really need 4 of, or I think want 4 of, because I think a lot of times you won't have a Pokemon in hand to replace. So the 2 count has been working pretty good so far. I had 4 Evolution Incense at one point, didn't like it, was drawing into these evolutions too quickly. So Communication, I like it. We have the flexibility of getting an evolution, but also still getting our basics into play as well. So up next from there, we have 2 copies of Energy Retrieval. This is a card that is getting a reprint in Sword and Shield as well. A card we've had over the years. It is finally coming back. Put 2 basic energies from discard into your hand. Obviously, when something gets knocked out, we can grab those energies back, slam them back down with Frosmoth, keep attacking. Up next from there, we have 3 copies of Lily's Pokédoll, a card I kind of mentioned earlier on, but it is an item card. You bench it as a colorless 30 HP Pokemon. It can't attack or retreat or do anything special, really, but whenever it gets knocked out, it gives up 0 prizes, and also if it's your active, you may put it on the bottom of your deck, which is pretty important. So I've actually become a pretty big fan of this card in this deck because I kind of mentioned the option earlier with Lapras V. You can attach an energy, switch into Lily's Pokédoll, and deny your opponent a prize. But also, I really like this card because it gives you a potential like pseudo switch in your deck. It gives you a like pivot. So the big issue with the deck with Frosmoth is that you have to accelerate energy onto the bench. And so if you have a Lily's Pokédoll, not only does this work as your, your 0 prize Pokemon you can just sacrifice, but even in the mid and late game, you can keep one in play to act as your free retreater in between knockouts, which is really nice. Or let's say in the case of the Lapras VMAX instance I highlighted earlier, where your Lapras has, a decent amount of energy on it, but it's not quite one-shotting your opponent. You can actually hard retreat your Lapras into a Lily's Pokédoll, accelerate a bunch of energy back to it, then use Lily's Pokédoll to go to the bottom of your deck, allowing your Lapras to come back into the active. So that's what I mean. It's a pseudo switch, and it allows you some really flexible pivoting options. Really been liking this card a lot, even outside of, like I said, the blatant combo with the base form Lapras V. But going on from there, we have 2 copies of Air Balloon, or Balloon, not sure what the official translation is going to be, but it's a new Pokemon tool card, and it gives the Pokemon it's attached to 2 less retreat. So this is pretty cool. Frosmoth has a 2 retreat cost, Sylveon GX has a 2 retreat cost. Really everything in the deck has an awkward retreat cost. And so this is one way we can actually create that pivot Pokemon for us in between knockouts. So between the Air Balloons and the Lily's Pokédolls, the lack of a free retreater like a Jirachi or something like that really isn't even, I think, a huge deal. Just because we can, I think, pretty effectively pivot whenever we need to, thanks to these 2 cards. And up next from there, we have 2 copies of Great Catcher. So Great Catcher, I originally actually had as Pokemon Catcher in this deck, believe it or not, just because Pokemon Catcher, I think, actually pairs very nicely with Magnolia, since you don't really need multiple pieces of it at a time, like something like a custom catcher. But I ultimately ran out of space to have like the thick 3 or 4 count of Pokemon Catcher. So we're going back to Great Catchers. It's fine. We can pick off the Denes, one-shot tag teams, whatever we need to do with Lapras VMAX. And then from there, to round out our trainer cards, we just have 1 copy of Reset Stamp. So Reset Stamp, of course, your opponent shuffles their hand into the deck, draws equal to the amount of prize cards they have left. So this is just a little bit of disruption that we have there. So that's going to be it for our trainer cards. Going on to our energy, we have 3, 6, 9, 11 copies of water energy in total to round out this list. So it, I think, looks like a little bit of a lower count of energy, since we are trying to dump as many energies as possible onto Lapras VMAX to take big one-hit knockouts. But you do have to remember we have Fishing Rod, we have Energy Retrieval as well to keep reusing these energies. So I don't think it's really a huge issue playing 11. Though I will admit, I think I would like a 12th energy. So if you guys are eyeing down cutting something, I think a 12th energy would be fine. Or maybe even a 3rd energy retrieval. Not really sure. But I wouldn't mind that as maybe like my 61st card in this particular list. So yeah, guys, that is going to be our attempt here at the Lapras VMAX Frosmoth deck. I know there's a lot of hype surrounding this archetype. So happy to be able to get out some content for you guys and start being able to mess with this deck a little bit. And like I said too, if you guys are interested in this archetype, head over to patreon.com/rarecandytcg and learn about how to access that brief article we posted and help support this channel along the way too. It really means a lot, guys. But definitely stay tuned to the channel. We have a ton of Sword and Shield coverage coming up over the next several weeks. So be sure to like and subscribe. And like I said, if you can, consider supporting us over at Patreon or by picking up some merch at our online store, rarecandytcg.com. It would mean a lot. But as always, thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.